take that as a win. I'm going to call to order this meeting of the April 24th, 2023 school committee meeting and invite you, if you can, to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So a reminder for public comment to introduce yourself and share your address. Virtual public comment is available through Zoom if you raise your hand, and you can be promoted to panelist, or if you're in the room to step up to the mic. And we'll just give a minute to see if anybody joined Zoom for that. If you're not on Zoom for public comment, the audio may be better on the YouTube stream, but that is your choice for the rest of the meeting.
We can do consent agenda before public comment if you want.
Yeah, I'm just going to count.
Okay.
And there looks like none, so we'll move on to the consent agenda. The meeting minutes have some slight edits in your email and will be retroactively added to the packet. The warrants were shared in your email. The monthly budget updates and the status of the general fund were in the packet. There's also a memo from the Student Activity Fund Review, and just calling out that that is actually 2 votes, one for the maximum balances for the school year 2023 to 2024, and those are unchanged. And then also on that memo is designating the Town of Westford accounting and finance staff as the internal auditors. And then the school choice recommendation is also in the packet, and that was anticipated for 73 total school choice students for the FY24. Any comments or discussion on the consent agenda? Catherine?
Well, I think Gloria should go
ahead.
first.
No,
Go for it, Gloria.
She was just smiling at me. I didn't know it was a thing.
I had one comment and a question.
Yeah.
And the comment is about the Student Activity Fund Review. For those who may not know the history of that, this student activity policy was overhauled several years ago. It is, school committee is technically the custodian of student activity funds on behalf of students. It is a huge endeavor to track these funds, so thank you to the finance department and all of the administrative assistants at the various schools who monitor and track these things, and all the club advisors who have to follow these procedures. It is a huge mountain of work, so thank you to everyone who makes that happen. My question was on the school choice recommendation. There was one place in the memo where it said 75, but then it looked like it was 73.
We
so I just
adjusted it, and I didn't change the 75. So the original was 75, but then after talking with 2 of the principals, we changed it from 3 to 2, brings the number to 73.
That's what I figured, but just checking.
Thanks.
Did you have the same one?
Actually, no, but it was the same, just on the school choice. I just wanted to kind of check in on, with the openings that we're looking at doing, 3 in Nab, 3 in Robinson, 3 in Abbott, and 3 in Crisafully. I assume, or forgive me if I'm wrong, but we still have other openings, so that if we have, kind of late summer registrations or people moving in, so we have plenty of wiggle room on top of the 3 openings on the various schools that we're looking at. Okay.
Yeah, we base that on the number of sections that are at each school and considering what possible move-ins could also take place as well.
And I just want to let you know that document in the packet was updated around 1 p.m. So if you're looking at 3 all the way down for a total of 12, it is now 3 at Namnasset, 2 at Robinson, 3 at Abbott, 2 at Crisafully, for a total of 10.
Oh, okay.
That was what Gloria was referencing to. I didn't update the 75 in the narrative, but the number is correct at 73.
Oh.
And I just wanted to add that last year I had an objection to the school choice recommendation, just because we hadn't talked through enough about what we were using the school choice fund for, right? So I think it's great to mention, because they are related issues, for our balance of school choice funds, that we do have some planned expenditures coming up that will help sort of right-size that balance with the ELA curriculum and the potential special education increase in tuition, so.
Right, and and we increased the offset in the FY24 budget as well too.
Thank you, yep.
And the special education potential increase, this would be available for us if that happens, but for that short one-time cost,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Because we still would have to figure out how to build that into the budget if
Yep.
that were to happen. But
Yeah.
yes,
And-
those are there.
And we did step through all of that at the March Finance Subcommittee meeting.
Right,
So,
right.
that's great. Sean, you had a question?
Yeah, for context, for school choice, we'd have no problem filling these 10 spots, right?
We haven't.
Okay.
Haven't had an issue or
We haven't had
filled them?
we haven't
Okay.
filled them, haven't had an issue in the past ever filling our school choice openings.
Okay. So that was my next question. How many applicants are we talking? Or is
Well, it
it's a
depends on the
waiting
grade
list?
level, yeah,
Okay.
because so just as a quick reminder to everybody, what used to happen is that we would have a specific hearing for school choice, because we thought that was typically what we're supposed to be doing, but then we learned last year that we only need to have the public hearing if, as a district, we are choosing to no longer participate in school choice. So we decided last year that we would still bring the school choice numbers to the school committee so that you'd still be able to vote on them, but it does give us a lot more latitude, because we could change the numbers in conversation with you. It's not something that goes through the state or anything. But the actual lottery process takes place in the summer. People have to apply for the specific slots, and then we have a physical lottery where we put all of the names into a bucket and it's live, and often families show up and wait to see if their names are selected, and we pull their names out, and we often end up with a wait list. So the first couple of slots get filled, and then there's usually a wait list as well after that. And at times, sometimes somebody doesn't accept the slot, and so then it does end up going to the wait list.
Okay.
But that's been the typical process.
And I
Good.
just wanted to, related to that, I just wanted to call out the addition. I don't remember seeing the table before.
Yeah.
But in the memo, the table of the breakdown showing how many students we have of school choice regular, how many students of staff members that we use those school choice slots, and then how many staff enrollments that are not through the school choice program, just for a total look at how many students are non-residents. So I thought that was very helpful. So I'm looking for a motion on the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor? Great, that's 6-0. Okay. Oh, thank you. That was the public comment after consent agenda. That's
all
great.
good.
We're going to move on to
all
informational updates.
Yep, you're doing great. This is thrown at you last minute, and you're doing
That's fine.
fantastic.
Rolling with it.
Right? So for our informational updates, first, I just want to remind everybody that the Board of Education is meeting at Westford Academy tomorrow, because our very own Eric Planke is the student member, and so each year the students' school hosts a spring meeting, and so they'll be there tomorrow. I believe, Mr. Antonelli, you said there was going to be some coffee served at 8:30?
Yes,
The meeting starts at 9, and it'll be in the Performing Arts Center.
correct.
Right, so hopefully you'll all be able to make it.
Bringing my autograph book.
Okay. The other exciting announcement is that we just found out recently that the Massachusetts Council for Social Studies is proud to announce that Mr. Steve Scully has been selected to receive the 2023 William Spratt Award for Excellence in Teaching Secondary Social Studies. So we think that's wonderful. He's going to receive that award next week. I think it might be nice maybe if we invite him back to a school committee meeting so that we can honor him here as well too. But yeah, so that's quite an achievement.
And next Tuesday, May 2nd, is our final professional development day. It's a full day because it's election day. Students have no school, but the staff are still in and will be engaged in professional development activities.
We'll be kind of wrapping up the year for the themes with various groups that we've been working on throughout the year, but we also have time carved out for Panorama. We're going to have a training for teachers and counselors, pre-K, well, kindergarten through grade 12, where they're going to, a Panorama rep will be walking them through how to dive into the playbook and look at their data, because this year the data is a little bit different. Because Panorama talks to Power School, teachers can get a lot more granular and look at their specific classes at the high school level. If their G block class has a different type of pattern or theme than their A block class, they can adapt strategies differently. And then they'll also be taking the staff survey as well. So that's an opportunity for us to get information about the staff and how they're feeling, and we'll compare that to last year's data as well to see if there's any growth, hopefully there is, or if there's anything specific that we have to target moving forward as well.
Thanks. School committee updates.
We'll hold off on policy, seeing as well. It's on the agenda.
Sean raised his hand first. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
CPAC meeting Wednesday, 4/26 at 7 p.m. It's through video conference, and that link can be found on the Facebook page.
Great. Thanks. Gloria?
The first is an announcement for the community, which is a reminder that the reason there's professional development on May 2nd is that is also town elections. So there are contested elections for local officials and also ballot questions, one of which is in support of funding for the Blanchard roof. So reminder to please go out and vote. Remind friends, family, to please go out and vote on May 2nd. The second was an announcement for the committee. I know we don't have students this evening, but our student advisory committee, I've been coordinating with them this year. Our next meeting is this Friday. We were meeting at Westford Academy in person. We've kind of switched that based on some student needs and committee needs to remote meetings on Friday afternoons. So if anybody is interested in joining us Friday afternoon, please let me know. And if anyone wants to take over being the liaison for that, since that will not be me, let me or Chris know.
What time is that again?
4:30 Friday, and it's remote. Yeah.
Thanks. Any other ones? I was just going to remind everybody that on tomorrow night's select board agenda, the schools will get a chance to present our ARPA requests, and then this is part of their final push to do a review and make funding decisions in early May. And a internal reminder to send any blackout dates for your summer plans to Chris or myself so we can try to get a date on the calendar for our retreat. And no student representatives.
Actually, just to note as well, the town DEI committee meet on Wednesday night this week as well. They're virtual.
Okay. Okay, so we will move on to the first piece of business item on the agenda is the recognition of Gloria Miller.
So, Ms. Miller, we have a gift for you. We want to thank you for your service. You have decided to move on to other things, but we'd like to present that to you. I will say, personally, I am very grateful for all your contributions over the years on the committee. I've enjoyed working with you as a principal and now as a superintendent, and we've had a lot of fantastic conversations over the years, and the work that you've been doing, you've always been a champion for the students, and I think your commitment has helped make us better, and so we thank you for that.
Thank you.
I wrote something, so bear with me if I read it. I just want to make sure I don't miss anything, but you were a welcoming figure for me personally as I decided to run and campaign in the spring of 2020, and we campaigned together. And then you went on to chair the committee during the extremely trying hybrid year, which should basically count like dog years for triple or double the time. And you've been a mentor and a support for all of us. We'll miss your off-camera sense of humor and your passion for creating an inclusive environment for all students. You're a wealth of historical and institutional knowledge for the committee, and we hope you don't go far, so we can text you when we need you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Am I supposed to say something? Thank you. It has been a rewarding and interesting 6 years. I would not trade this experience for anything. It has been invaluable. It's been educational for me. If I can say one thing that I think I have taken away from this experience on a personal level, it is really that the value of having a growth mindset and grit, and the importance of that, whether you're a student, whether you're an adult, whether you're in the classroom, out of the classroom, it's so invaluable to cultivate those skills for yourself. So if you're a terrible pickleball player, go play pickleball. You'll learn something about yourself. You'll have a great time. If you've never written a novel, go write a novel. You'll learn something about yourself. You'll have a great time. It's wonderful to see how our students grow and change, and if we can cultivate that growth mindset instead of a fixed mindset, that they can always change, they can always grow, they can always recover from a bad day and have a better day the next day. Like, I think if that's the one thing we can instill in our students during their time here and cultivate in our community, that's invaluable. And on a community level, I just have immense respect for everyone who works in education. In every role, in every building, whether they're in the front office or on our custodial staff or in central office, keeping our finances straight, answering the phones, serving lunches to students in the classroom, our ESPs, our administrators. It's astounding to me the number of people that have to A, make the choice to work in education, and that B, have to collaborate together. It is very much the definition of it takes a village or a town. So I hope that is also, while I will not be on the committee, I hope that is something I can take forward with me into the community to remind everyone in the community, whether you have students in the schools or not, it takes a village, it takes a town to educate our young people, and thank you to all of the school staff that make that happen every day.
Thank you.
Hear, hear.
Yes. Well done, Gloria.
Thank you. We will miss you. Next item of
As we say
business.
goodbye, we also say hello. And I would like to welcome Miss Nina Balf to come forward to kind of get to know you for a minute. So Nina was actually at Nabnasset this morning, right?
Spent a good amount of time
Were you-
there today,
were
and
you
I'm
there
on cloud nine
amidst
still.
the traffic or not?
I saw the detour, yeah.
You saw? Okay, good.
Yeah, but everyone made it work, and that's what
right.
you do, right?
Right? So
Yeah.
you had an opportunity to kind of spend some time in the building.
I did. I got to meet with Principal Dubois and then meet all the staff and visit with the students, and I got to do some touring and just get in there and sort of hit the ground running. It was one of the best days I've had in a really long time. So I am so grateful to just be in this part of this community, and after hearing you speak, Gloria, I'm like, oh, I get to be a part of this, right, in this journey that we are all on. So thank you. I'm honored to be here.
Well, we're very happy to have you as
Thank
well,
you.
too.
Thank you.
I didn't know if there's, this isn't an interview,
Yeah,
as
no.
you've already been
I sat
appointed.
in this very seat.
Right, that's right, you did sit in that very seat. But I didn't know if there were any questions that anybody just had about, where Ms. Balf is coming from to join us, or, anything about, what do you do for fun?
What do I do for fun?
Yeah.
I am a big beach goer, so that's time on the beach and reading and unwinding is my favorite pastime. I'm a big worker-outer. I haven't been able to for the past few months. I had surgery, but I'm getting back into it, and that feels so good. Just taking time for yourself, right? And kids fill me up, so that is part of my joy every day, is working with them. So I'm excited to continue that.
Great. Thank you.
I'm so excited. I'm intrigued. What made you apply to Westford?
Westford. Everyone keeps asking me
Oh,
that.
really?
So yeah, so I was on my search, and I had heard of it. I'm from the North Shore, so this was definitely started doing my research, and then I think what drew me in was the small community vibe. That even though it's a bigger population of students, and then when I saw Nabnasset, I was like, oh my gosh, it's a neighborhood school. And when I first started in education, when I was in Reading, we were a neighborhood school. And just the connections you make with people based on that, right? When you drop your little one off to school and we can say hi and check in and all that, there's something very special to be said about that. So I'm happy to get back to that and, yeah, be a part of that leadership piece in that kind of a community.
My girls went to NAB, so I
Aw.
mean, you've hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot
Yeah.
of people can say that.
Yeah, you can
so,
feel it,
yeah.
right, when you walk in.
I'm very
Yeah.
excited.
Thank you.
And hopefully the work will all be completed by the time
Yeah.
you arrive in August.
That's
So
all right.
we know
That's all right.
sewage or waterworks there.
Yeah, you need that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. You had the opportunity to meet two of your colleagues behind you, the
I
middle school
did,
principals.
yes.
Mr. Antonelli is the principal of the academy, so you'll get a great chance to work with him. And Mr. Ware is one of the deans at the academy as well, too.
Perfect.
So
Thank you.
part of the team, but
Part
you've
of
been
the
meeting
team.
other people.
I have, yeah. It's a big team, but it feels inclusive, and that's all I could ask for. And I'm ready to learn and hit the ground running. So
Great.
Well, we're happy to have you.
thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks.
We won't be offended if you take off.
That's right.
We say that to everybody, don't worry. Next up, we have the middle school improvement plans. And we're welcoming Principal Hammer and Principal Hislop to the microphone. And feel free to dive in.
Well, thank you for welcoming us to present our 23-24 middle school improvement plans. Allison and I have been working very closely together over the course of the school year with our school councils, and I actually had the opportunity to bring them together to create this school improvement plan. The goals are consistent between the two schools. The three areas that we've identified, you'll see, are also very closely tied to the strategic district improvement plan. And those three areas are equitable student outcomes, a sense of belonging, and social, emotional, and academic engagement. Themes I'm sure you're hearing from many of us. So we've selected a few action items under each of these umbrellas to share tonight, but of course if you have specific questions, we're happy to answer too. So the first goal, Allison's going to talk about some of the specifics, but I'll share the goal. It's members of the Stony Brook and Blanchard communities will be collaborating to increase alignment of our programming and practices while maintaining each school's unique identity.
So the goal here is really for the two schools to be collaborating, and Tim and I, along with Patty and Rick, as well as others in our community, have really been collaborating a lot this year already, and we have found that to be really rewarding as well as really productive in helping us to bring some alignment, some similarities, but also we're unique schools as well, so we want to hold on to those pieces as well. Some of the areas where we really felt this year were helpful in our collaboration, we did a lot of collaboration preparing for our neurodiversity celebration week, which was great, and plan to expand on that in future years. But also really that collaboration was really important to us to know that the kids were all getting similar messages and seeing similar symbols around the school as well. We have been really working hard throughout the year, focusing on how we communicate with families and students about progress through report cards as well as progress reports. So we've made some steps forward with that already and expect that we will continue to do that to make sure that the messaging that we're giving to parents and families and students is clear and really shows what it is that kids are showing their strengths, but also where need is for improvement. Tim already mentioned our school advisory councils have met together, and that has been really helpful in preparation for all of those meetings. Tim and I meet ahead of time and really talk through our planning for those meetings as well, which has been really helpful for us, knowing that we're working on a really unified kind of plan. So it's helpful for us to have shared resources there. And then we've been looking also at the different offerings at the school. There are things about the schools that are are unique, as well as some things that are very similar. And we're looking at, what are the things that make that strong, and where might we be able to, to align more. One specific example right now, we, looking at our music offerings at Stony Brook, we don't currently have a general music type of a course. We do have, however, some resources that could happen, that could do that for next year. So we are going to be offering a semester course next year for music appreciation for our 7th and 8th graders, as well as theater arts, without taking away. It's really an ad using our existing staff. So there's no cost increase to that, and that's one way we're hoping to bring a little bit more alignment as well. So that's exciting for us. I think Tim's going to talk about goal 2.
So the second goal is to promote a safe environment where students and staff embrace diversity, feel a strong sense of belonging, and have an equitable opportunity to thrive. So we know there's a lot included in that goal, but this goal is closely tied to a number of initiatives that are already underway, work already in progress in the district. We're pretty proud of that work that's already been started. For example, we'll be expanding the use of the Panorama survey data. Carrie spoke to that a little bit earlier on PD Day. The staff will be looking at Panorama and the playbook, and we want to continue to promote the use of those resources, whether it's in instructional support team meetings, as educators are crafting their educator evaluation goals. If students come up as a concern during common planning time meeting, we really want to encourage the use of that rich resources that we have at our fingertips, and we'll have data from the fall and the spring after the second administration. We've been participating in the Equity by Design leadership courses, so we're going to be bringing that training into our faculty meeting, into our departmental meetings, common planning time meetings with staff. The staff has also been working with the UDL framework in their professional development, their department meetings with coordinators. So we want to continue to build on that foundation next year with the professional development time that we have allocated to us, site-based. So that will certainly be a major focus for us next year, and of course, many years beyond. We hope that it's also apparent as you read through this goal, the strategies, and some of the success measures that students, of course, are central to this work, providing opportunities for leadership, voice, choice. We have an incredibly service-oriented student body, and they drive a lot of these initiatives that build a sense of belonging and community at both schools. They lead the charge when it comes to things like our AWOD, peer mentor lessons that are taught during advisory, planning of our spirit days and other community building events. So we want to continue to support those initiatives and provide them with resources and expand those opportunities for students to really take the lead. And middle school is a really appropriate, exciting time for them to do that. So finally, similarly, we've incorporated the Westford Climate Roadmap initiative in this goal. We thought that this was a good place for it because we know that students are looking for those leadership opportunities. So we want to first familiarize the students and staff with that climate roadmap, and then work with the resources we have. Not only in our school, we have some very passionate staff members, family members, we have community resources and organizations that we're connected to. So we want to tap into that and see how we can get our students involved in 6th and 7th and 8th grade in an age-appropriate manner.
In our third goal, our social, emotional, and academic engagement, the goal is that we'll continue to integrate academic, behavioral, and social emotional supports and interventions to enhance student engagement and outcomes. And really going back to our Panorama data, we're going to be using that as a basis for where we focus our efforts. Really helping staff to work on how to incorporate that into their instructional practices. The idea of releasing the pressure valve, it's not always just taking away, but really looking at how can we help kids manage those big feelings, those big emotions, and big things that can really sort of make them feel stuck. Really looking at our schedule structures, and then really ways to build upon our strengths. Is one mentioning the the scheduling ideas earlier, but ways to build upon the strengths that we have at each of the schools, and also identify areas that we might need to make some changes. One thing that Tim in his school has already begun, and they're planning to continue, is looking at, I call it a schedule committee. I don't remember what you call it.
We call it a time and learning committee.
Time and learning committee. And we're going to be starting at Stony Brook next year, a scheduling committee as well, really to do the same type of work, looking at what areas of our schedule are working really well and helping to support student social, emotional, as well as academic engagement and learning, as well as where might we be able to make some adjustments and really to help support our staff and our students for their growth.
Was there more?
Okay. No, I think that's
Yeah, no, you got, yep, that was last.
There's a lot there.
Open it up for comments, yeah.
Yeah, Allison, I know you were touching on this a little bit, but like, I feel last year we spent a lot of time talking about the effect of COVID, right? And, we talked about there being a gap of kids being more stressed, having more anxiety, maybe being behind a little, which was true nationally, right? Not just with Westford. I was wondering if either of you could kind of speak to, are you seeing that gap kind of close, and are things looking better? I mean,
so it's hard to put true data on that because, kids are, every year is a little different for everybody. However, I will say overall, I'm seeing, and I think our teachers are also seeing, kids are understanding how to be students, how to be in a school setting for a full day, going from class to class to class, and I think that they're also sort of realizing the expectations of how can I take control over my learning? How can I make sure that I understand something? How can I look for help? How can I get help when I need it? And recognizing when they do need it. So I do think that we're seeing some improvement in that. I'm not saying that it's gone. I don't, because I don't think anybody can say whether it is or is not. But we are definitely seeing a more what was pre-COVID as an educator. We're seeing what it was more like pre-COVID, which is really nice to see. I don't know. I hope that answers your question.
No, it absolutely does.
It's a hard thing to put exact numbers on, but it
right,
does.
and I get it. It's anecdotal, right? I mean, you're also looking at your students, right? So appreciate it.
And coming on the back of that, I suppose, is to kind of check in, how are staff doing? How are, because so many staff, I've heard so much about, burnout and just kind of, exhaustion from trying to not just get through COVID, but this last year or two of trying to, put us back on track. I mean, are you getting a sense of their own well-being and where they are, if they're still feeling overwhelmed or if they need more help, resources, that kind of thing?
I think the staff well-being is a priority for both of us. We've had that conversation and looking at releasing the pressure valve for our students. We want to do the same for the staff.
Yeah.
I know, I'm sure you've heard this before, when we came back from COVID, you weren't looking at a 7th grader in front of you. It was more like a 6th grader, and you were going through these routines that took even longer to instill and develop than they did in previous years, and I think we're still hearing that feedback, but I'm so incredibly proud of the staff and the flexibility and their just willingness to meet students where they're at.
Okay. Awesome.
I would agree. And I think we are. Is there stress still with it? Yes, 100%. But I think there is also a community coming together and helping one another. And I see a lot of people in the building giving each other what they need when they need it as colleagues. And I think that's really, really important. And I think people are more willing to ask for what they need. As a new administrator, I never know, are people going to actually come and ask me for what they need? Yeah. I have a lot of people asking me for what they need. And I'm feeling very good about that they're willing to do that. I think that's really important.
It's a job that I think you can only do in collaboration, I think. So it's really important that they do. So that's amazing to see.
Absolutely.
And just to note, this is a really solid improvement plan. I mean, it's just packed with really solid, strategies and, who's taking responsibility. You can see the time and energy put into that. So thank you both very much. It's very clear you're a great team. So
thank you.
Keep it up.
We make a good
We
team.
do. Yeah.
Speaking of teamwork, as everyone's probably heard, I've been hearing these for 6 years. It is amazing to see the collaboration between the middle schools, because that wasn't necessarily something we emphasized 6 years ago. And we used to hear from parents, well, Blanchard has this, why doesn't Stony Brook have that, or vice versa? And I don't feel like we hear that to the same degree now. I think there is a much better community spirit between the middle schools, and I like that there's part of your plan is to enhance that. I also wanted to thank you both. I know our students aren't here tonight, but I know they had a wonderful time coming down to the middle schools and meeting with your student councils and getting like their thoughts, and then coming to present to us about what the middle schoolers thought about potential grade level configuration in the district, which is something we're talking about as a committee. And they were so excited about that event. They're planning their next event, and you're probably going to hear from them because I think it's going to be May.
Good. That was amazing.
It was.
They want to have the middle schoolers come up and learn more about town government and about how town government works. And they're like, we should bring the middle schoolers. So you'll be hearing more from them.
That's great.
And I also just wanted to say on the plan, reading through everything, there's so many exciting things, but the one that really leapt out to me is looking at the scheduling and time on learning. I think there's such a need for that. There's so many things that can be done with the schedule that can maybe help improve the experience of the day for both students and staff. And I'm so glad that instead of, well, that's the way we've always done it, to kind of step back from that boxed-in approach and take a fresh look at it and see, what should our schedule look like at the middle school level. I think that's really exciting. So good luck with that process.
I'll jump right onto that because I get really excited when I see, especially grades 3 and up, when the improvement plans include the opportunities for like the student voice, right? So like I think using the student surveys and stuff is really exciting with the schedule on learning and the pressure valve goals. Both of those I think will be really cool to see what you hear from your middle schoolers, because I'm sure they will tell you.
They will.
I just wanted to touch on, I know that when a couple times a year, we usually meet with the high school student council representatives. And I've been able to join a couple of the meetings this year. And one thing we've heard from them, and it came up again with sort of the grade level configurations discussion, is more opportunities to sort of mingle, right? Because then you get to WA and you're all sort of smushed in together. And it's great to have any of those opportunities ahead of time leading up to that. So it sounds like some of these are in there, and I really appreciate that. And it's redundant from the elementary grade levels, but it's just really exciting to keep seeing the STIP come to life, in these ways, and very tangible and concrete goals. So thank you. I did have a quick question, speaking of the STIP, about your core values. Because I know that as part of the STIP, we're moving to a district-wide. So if you wanted to speak to your plans for that, or do you have a rollout or anything in mind?
So we've talked about this, Allison and I, at a few points, and we've actually spoken with our school advisory councils about it too, to get some initial feedback from them. And we feel like it's important as a district to embrace those common core values, but we also want to, as we communicated in our first goal, maintain each school's strong individual culture. We want students to come to the middle school and feel like this is a special, kind of has its own vibe school and its own identity, and we want to continue with those traditions and continue to support that, but also embrace the district's core values as well.
Yeah. Cool. And are you planning that for like fall, the next school year?
In terms of the district core values?
Yeah, to introduce
So
them.
we have a lot of things in place specific to Panther Pride and Blanchard Rocks, but we don't have anything specific to the district yet. So that's something that we certainly need to get some feedback and input and put in place.
Cool.
Yeah.
I think that'll be exciting. Any other thoughts?
That could be an interesting one, though, for the student council to work on, actually, to get their voice into it. Because a lot of them would be aware of Spirit having come through the elementary schools now, so.
Yeah.
It could even be the interesting ways in which you bring the two schools together.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is true. I like that.
I also really appreciated the inclusion of the panorama data. We always have data in these plans about enrollment and having that panorama data there, and recognizing that that's something we should be looking at consistently, and that is a touchstone. So I really appreciate that inclusion. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Thank you both.
All right.
Thank you.
Looking for a motion to approve the middle school improvement plans.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Great, thank you. And next up, Westford Academy.
So we have Principal Antonelli.
Good evening. having me. It's good to be back. I haven't been here for a while. It's good to see all of you.
Well, you're welcome to stay.
Yes, and to our middle school principals, we won't be offended if you go on your way for the night.
So welcome to stay.
You're also welcome to
Up to
stay.
you. But
Emphasis on the.
I do want to commend Dr. Chu in the process that we're utilizing for the development of the plans. I like the process of working with the school council members from the beginning of the school year instead of coming out of the gate really fast and trying to figure out, we're talking about budget things, we're just getting our feet in the ground and the plane up in the air. I call it a jumbo jet at Westford Academy, right? Trying to get that thing at the right altitude. And so I really like the idea of working throughout the year and then presenting for the following year because it gives us conversations to kind of aim towards. So that's really good. So I appreciate that, Dr. Chu. 2 points. One is to Sean's point. When you look at our school improvement plan, you'll see data on the pages, right? And you'll see a little bit of a trend with our data going down a little bit. And I think to your point, Sean, I think the pandemic has taken a toll on our kids. It really has. And I feel as though the trend is moving in the other direction. So I feel confident that, we're going to move the other way. But some damage was done. There was a lot of stress in families. It was a very different time for the American education system. But have no fear. We've got a great system, and we'll get everything moving back in the right direction. But I think you've seen a little bit of that trend, and we've heard about it throughout the nation of just kids struggling with the pandemic. I've got close friends that are struggling with their own kids who just couldn't make it through college. So it's a difficult time. The other piece, to Catherine's point about stress of staff, to Tim's point, very, very proud of them, and I say it to them all the time, fighting through the pandemic and hanging in there. And Gloria remembers when we were about 6 days before opening school, and we hired 8 or 9 staff, and I'm glad to say that all those staff are still at WA.
That's exciting.
It's amazing, yeah. So we have not had a lot of turmoil. So my focus will also be on keeping them, motivated and happy and moving them forward. Because just listening to the news tonight, there's a lot about teachers falling behind in salaries. I heard a 6.5% differential in salaries and such. So those are some kinds of things we need to work on to incentivize the programs. Otherwise, we're going to lose a lot of traction in our entire system. So again, what we did was we stayed specifically with the strategic district improvement plan goals. And when you look at goal number 1 in our plan, I had to add a little something different in there because we have 4 priorities that we have to focus on that have to be part of your school improvement plan based on NEASC. So we had 4 different areas that we had to highlight when we do our progress report that's coming up very quickly. So that's core values, and that was getting back to Valerie's point about developing a vision of the graduate, core values that connect with Westford's core values. So we have to work on that moving towards our 5-year plan. Written curriculum, continuing to use UBD as our written curriculum. Technology, one student management system, which is Google that we use. And then the last one was creating spaces and time for collaboration. So that was, some of the things that we have to incorporate. So I put that under goal number 1. We were also done a tremendous amount of work this year with UDL, which we'll focus on for next year as well. And I'd like to really focus a lot more on professional learning communities as we move forward, and I think that will naturally develop. Goal number 2, you may think it's a little aggressive, so I get that. And goal number 2 is talking about structures, organizational structures, and again, bringing up the change of start times. And so the school council members pushed on me and said, let's get some dates down there. So those dates may not, be perfectly in line with what we want to do, but we wanted to put some dates out there that we wanted to strive towards, because I really believe even more now, changing these times for our kids is strategically the right move and very important based on what we've gone through over the last 4 years. So I think that's really a positive piece. And the other piece is, in order to build the professional learning communities, the consistency of having professional development, because you get traction for a little bit and then you lose traction. And there's a lot of time between the professional development. So I know we've talked about this at leadership before. There are different communities that do a half day every Wednesday. I just use that arbitrarily. I know Bedford does that, whether it's every other week or every week they do that, so you can solidify some traction to really focus on professional learning communities and moving the school forward. And I want to just put it out there, I know I put down 2 aggressive pieces there, willing to work on both. I was on the Start Times committee before, and we did a lot of work, Dan Toomey and I, and I'm also, I'll roll up the sleeves as far as taking a look at any kind of schedule changes that we'd be interested in as we go through and look at the feasibility study. Goal number 3 is, Dr. Cleary was talking about the panorama data, and we're going to look at that as a faculty next Monday. And that'll be just before teachers will be able to dive into the data. But we had data from last March and this March, and I'm very pleased to say that in almost every single category, the green arrow was pointing up. And that means that there was some percentage change in the right direction in the sense of belonging in all different kinds of different categories. So I'm sure Brian Rook perhaps may be back, and I'd be happy to accompany him in regards to what that's looking like. Lauren Clark, our Director of School Counseling, I know she was here, but just before the vacation, brought up the fact that we'd like to do a universal mental health screener of some sort. So she's going to reference that, or excuse me, review that and try and figure out a good mental health screener for the school counseling department. And then one of our school social workers, Lauren Doucette, has met with Dr. Chu, and is going to meet with Dr. Chu again tomorrow about the possibilities of a therapy dog. I happened to be at Burlington High School about 4 years ago and was introduced to their therapy dog. Very well received by the community of Burlington, and I just think it's a wonderful idea. We have a lot of students that I think would really connect. I know there are some things we need to think about, but it's been done, it's out there, and I think it would be a nice move for us to take on as a district. Lauren's very excited about it. She is willing to step up and be the overseer of this particular therapy dog. So that would be kind of exciting for us to have, and hopefully we can move in that direction. There's some grant work that can be done to help offset the costs and such. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty exciting. And the last piece was about sustainability. And just thinking about this word a lot, and I know Phil is here tonight from SMMA to talk about feasibility. And when Phil was walking around Westford Academy, he was talking about our educational spaces and what they look like, and talking about the old chairs and the desks and stuff, and what it could look like for the future. And so over the last couple of weeks, I was just in a hospital facility, and they were doing something on sustainability within that particular hospital. And they were talking about healthy spaces, right? Limited use of materials and furnishings that contain chemicals such as antimicrobials, flame reductions or retardants, and vinyl, offering more plant-based cafeteria to reduce some of the gases and so forth. So it was really, really interesting, and this kind of popped up in front of me. So we put in some things about sustainability, looking at perhaps more healthy physical plant, and that has to do with also the HVAC as the buildings get older and such. Solar power, we have 2 students that are looking at solar power right now, collecting some information to figure out if there's an opportunity at Westford Academy to do something like that. We have something called the Giving Gardens right now that we've just, we're going to start planting some vegetables right now, and that's going to go right into our cafeteria, and some of our students are going to be involved with growing those things. And then the other piece was just again on the food impact. We do a lot of recycling at Westford Academy of food, and it was just over the weekend they did the composting again, and a lot of that compost we'll be using for our Giving Gardens. So there's a lot of things in this particular plan. It's pretty chock full. I want to thank the committee members for their work. They were very flexible this year, and just brought their brains, and I gave them homework from session to session, and they came back with some really great ideas. So I think we've got a pretty good plan for moving into 23-24.
I'm going to open it up, but first I just want to say that it is chock full, but I appreciate that, like the awareness you have to make some of the multi-year goals, right? Like, it's a lot to bite into, but
Right.
it's not just a 12-month goal.
Right.
So, yeah. Thanks. Yeah, Sean.
Well, and that's one of the things that I wanted to point out, particularly, I think it was goal number 2, 3? I'm sorry, 2. The start times, right? Like, I mean, of course, you have 24, 25, and this has been an ongoing discussion. I just appreciate that it's still here, still being discussed, because at least in my time with this committee, it's not just a wish list, right? I mean, this is a priority for the committee, and it has more to do with, I guess, finances than anything, right? So appreciate seeing it here, and if we can get there in 24, 25, heck yeah, let's do it, you know? And I was thinking about this when Ms. Balfe was presenting earlier, and it's not many times that we have so many of our building leadership in one room, but I really think it's one of the strengths of our district, is the leadership team that we have, and the fact that you folks, and so many of you have been here for so many years and put in, you know, it's not a revolving door like some districts are, and I appreciate that. It's really an asset to Westford Public Schools, and testament to Mr. Islip, Ms. Hammer, and Mr. Antonelli, and having Dean Ware, who's been here for so long. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just excited about some of the creativity in there, and I'm all about the therapy dog. We're very lucky at the MASC conference in November. There was a whole talk given on the benefits of therapy dogs in schools. We even had our own therapy cat who joined us and was the hit of the conference. So there's some really solid data, and I spoke to a number of various educators and teachers in various districts who are using them and the benefits of them. And my hope is that can kind of, you know, if it goes great in the academy and works well, it can potentially trickle down into some other schools in the district, because I just think it's a very simple way to really kind of, you know, help, in particular, certain, you know, groups of our kiddos and even staff as well. So, no, and I love their sustainability plans, and definitely on the school start times. So,
I also just want to mention too that I didn't really capture the essence of the DEI work that's being done too. I mean, there's just a lot of work that's been done. We recently held a forum with about 40 to 50 students, and Dr. Chu's allowed me to work with Dr. Shannon. She came in to help us facilitate that particular afternoon. A lot of great feedback from that. We want to have one more before the end of the school year, and then just keep those going really with some sustainability for next year. The students really liked it, really liked it. And although we only got through one or two, really only one question, it was a really impactful hour, and we had about 5 more questions, so the students are excited about the next one to continue on with that conversation.
How do you select students for that group?
It was just random. We invited them for after school right now, from 2 to 3, and we're going to try and weave into our advisory next year so we can open it up for more students.
I love the fact that even though it's not in the plan, it's just embedded. It's just part of,
Right.
of what's happening. So
Right.
keep it up. That's
Thank you.
I thank you. There's a lot in here, so there's a lot to absorb. I would suggest in future years that you can take a cue from colleagues, and in addition to all of the test data that's in here, I think this committee is really trying to emphasize the importance of social emotional learning. So if we could see that panorama data in future years, in addition to the test data, I think that's just as important, if not more so.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
How would you want to see that particular, because there's so many questions, you
Right.
know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
it probably would have to be a subsequent event, you know, to share that data, which I think is really important.
Well, and perhaps that's the way to
Yeah.
do it. I
Yeah,
know
okay, I see what you're
the middle schools gave us just a snapshot, just like a one page that had some overall. But I thought that was it was a nice emphasis
Yeah.
to kind of kick off the middle school plans, that was front and center. So even if it is just something that's a snapshot that gives us that, you know, Sean was mentioning the trends of kind of how students are responding post COVID, it's more than the test scores, right? So getting that panorama data snapshot in these plans, I think, gives it context to lead into all your other ambitious goals. My other comment was on the ambitious goals. I mean, clearly, we've touched on goal 2. That's an ambitious goal, and there need to be district-wide conversations and district-wide resources, obviously, that would have to come to bear to make that a fruition. If there's one vote I never got to take, it was the later school start time vote. Well, so hopefully colleagues of mine will get to take that vote in the future, and I will cheer from the sidelines. But what I would encourage you to do at the high school is to look at what are the high school aspects of that problem that you can tackle. Since there are district-wide implications as well, but what could WA focus on? One of the things out there in the start time literature is healthy start times for our students have the biggest impact if it's also accompanied by education. If the students are learning about the importance of sleep and they're learning about the importance of understanding their natural rhythms, embedding that understanding of the importance of that, even before the change actually takes place, and teaching students about that actually magnifies the impact and the benefit to students once you have the change in place. So I would encourage you to look at that and incorporate that, and also just the more we're talking about it and kind of creating some grassroots energy, since it does have district-wide implications, if the high school can focus on starting to communicate not just to our students, but their parents, their families, to the broader community about how this is important, why it's important. I think that actually helps with the energy for the overall initiative. So I think having this in your plan, if you can focus on those aspects of it in terms of education and promoting the idea to not just the students but the broader community, I think would be a huge asset in the overall, achieving the overall goal. And along similar with that, I think the idea is very exciting to have that kind of consistent schedule with those half days consistency. We always hear from parents that, especially with more of our families and more having 2 working parents, juggling the professional development schedule can be challenging. And in communities that have a common time, often childcare, other after-school activities kind of fill that gap. I mean, I know in some of our parallel communities, if they have that half day on Wednesday, dance studios have offerings during that half day, karate studios, and so they've found a way to make it work to where the schedule really does kind of feed off the community resources. And I think if you want to look at the high school aspect of this program, trying to re-envision what would the high school day look like with this? What impact would it have for high school scheduling? We've certainly moved from the 6-drop-1 to the 5-drop-2, and that's, I think, been an improvement from everything we've heard from students. But there's so many other models that could potentially be helpful. And I know changes in some of our rules about physical education has really hurt participation in our music ensembles. So weaving that in as well and figuring out what would be the best schedule that would help our students, help our staff, help recover our music ensembles, help support those programs. There are a lot of aspects there that I think, again, if Westford Academy does that step back, and I know our middle schools are looking at doing it, does that step back, what are new, fresh ways of looking at what the high school schedule could be, and what could we envision for that? I think that could be very exciting and helpful to the overall district initiative, because it creates that energy and that excitement.
Good points.
Anyone else?
I just, as Gloria was talking about the data and the panorama data, I was just thinking what it might be as simple as, you don't need, because I know there's so many questions, and what it might be interesting to do is to just kind of pull out those maybe 3 or 4 particular points that are connected into the goals. So like, so we've spotted this in the panorama data. It's
Yep.
clearly going to be something we need to
Yep.
focus on,
Yep.
and just to show that connection
My
so we
brain's
can
thinking
see.
of 3 or 4 questions right now.
Exactly.
That I could have just woven in connections that students feel to staff.
Yeah.
That's changed, and
Yeah.
it's changed a nice percentage-wise, so, yeah,
Yeah.
I can certainly add that in the future.
Because I know Brian will probably do.
Yep.
I just can see this document becoming so much more family friendly as well, to read for parents who are just interested in, what's WA doing and where have they kind of come to the conclusion on these. And so I think it's becoming a very readable document, so.
I can certainly do an addendum to this, and add in a page on some of the
Yeah.
data that because Brian and I are gonna meet this week to discuss some of the things that we're gonna talk with the faculty about.
Oh,
So if
fantastic.
we wanna soften this up, and I didn't realize that, I might have missed that, because I know that this, my 2 colleagues did share with me, but
Yeah.
I may have just missed that particular piece, so
It's fine.
it's easy enough for me to add in.
Yeah, no, that would be awesome.
Okay, yeah, happy to do that,
I just think it's good feedback for families as
Yeah.
well, and students.
sure, not a problem.
There we go.
Anything else? Looking for a motion to approve the Westford Academy School Improvement Plan.
So moved.
Thank you. And
Second?
thank you. All those in favor?
There we go.
Great. Thanks,
Thank
Jim.
you.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
When do we get to meet the dog?
Oh, hoping soon.
There's work to be done.
Does he come
There's
to,
still-
do they get to come to school committee meetings?
There's-
tonight?
Have a great night.
Thanks.
Night, guys.
Next order of business is an update from SMMA. Okay, yeah, no. What?
We
I do, I will get that. I don't see Rosemary on Zoom yet.
She might, yeah.
On time.
Right?
But, do you know if anything came up for Rosemary?
I don't know.
Okay, but you're ready to
Yeah.
roll
Yep,
ahead anyway?
yep.
Okay, great. So. And just to set the context for this, if that's okay, oh, I had that somewhere. This is information, oh, yeah.
You click on the small line in the left, or even just,
I'm not even touching
Oh,
that.
it's not.
It's not on
It's
mine.
on this one, is it?
wow,
Oh.
thank you.
Yeah, just minimize
Perfect.
it.
Or you could minimize it.
There's-
Oh, that's
If you
fine.
touch like the line,
There
it
you go.
should,
Yeah.
there you go. Okay,
Perfect.
great. I did send this presentation around to your email, so hopefully you were able to at least read the email that set the context for tonight, which is that this is a check-in, intended as a check-in with no decision point or, even, I'm sure input is always welcome, but this is a check-in, a status update on the progress, so.
And one of the things, we met earlier today to just kind of talk, the working group met. And I think one of the things that's important for us to remind the committee and just to remind everybody who's listening and paying attention that with the decision to submit the SOI for the Robinson School, which was submitted on the 14th, and you've now all seen the finalized SOI, we're not going to hear from the MSBA until November. So the things that we're going to be talking about even just tonight, these are just different things that we're learning about through the study. When we do the master plan discussion even later, which will be a much more detailed presentation with all the different capital aspects as well too, that we really are looking at a much longer timeline than it sounds like when we actually throw slides up and show different configurations and things like that. It might feel like it's a little bit more right in front of us than it really is. And if I stole any of your thunder,
No,
I
that's,
apologize.
that's great, that's great. And let me just say, it was great to hear Mr. Antonelli talk about sustainability as a goal. Usually it's the design professionals bring it to communities, and when communities bring it back and get it started, especially if it's coming from students who are inheriting this planet. it's wonderful to hear that as a goal in a school improvement plan. So I just wanted to, I couldn't let that one go.
Great, thank you.
So, so the tasks to date, and everyone here in this room has seen much of the lead-in of this, but there are people at home very likely who may not, so I'm just going to cover a little bit of old ground as we go through. We've been through the facilities assessment on the buildings themselves, the educational adequacy, the MSBA statement of interest, which was submitted. Tonight we're going to talk about long-term options, and we're going to be putting three out there for discussion, and then next steps of having a community meeting, as we had identified, to the community to talk about options, and also talk about conceptual cost models in today's dollars. So the facilities assessments you've seen this before. It's the criteria of the building components and systems that we looked at. Engineers and architects went through each of the buildings, did a very detailed assessment. And next slide, and educational planners, including me, did a similar kind of assessment of the buildings in their ability to support next generation learning well into the future. And so, next slide, what happened, coming out of that was our identification that the Abbott, the Robinson, and the Day schools are in need of comprehensive renovation or more, and so and again, through discussion, through what we saw in those facility analysis and educational adequacy, we identified as a professional recommendation that the Robinson was in most need. We've identified that the Abbott is next in line, and the Day is in line behind that. They all require work. That's our assessment, ordered them in that way, and which has led to the SOI. And the SOI, again, to probably the best way of saying it is that MSBA identified that by submitting an SOI, they're not promising you anything, and they're not requiring you to do anything. So it's a matter of getting in line, identifying that these are issues that you'd like explored, and this is and for these reasons. And they're not committing to anything, but the potential of the outgrowth of that could be significant to the community. So looks a little clearer when it's on a laptop. Your current grade configuration and the color coding is simply by grade level. The pre-K 2 schools in red, the 3 to 5 schools in blue, 6-8 in green, and Westford Academy in mustard at the bottom. So that's your current configuration. The first option that we have identified is one where, and again, in the lower right-hand corner, and I'll read that, in green, some educational changes, renovations as needed. So that some educational changes may be things like more up-to-date furniture and technology and things like that don't have huge capital costs, but are keeping up. And those are the Miller and Crisafulli, which are in fact over 20 years old. So one can assume that that's starting to we're starting to see some modest needs there. The next in Mustard is Nabonasset, which is modest educational changes. Again, Nabonasset had been through, when it saw an addition, it had some mechanical and electrical upgrades at the time, so it's in a sort of class by itself. And then the three schools which we identified as the Robinson, Day, and Abbott. And so this option is to maintain the status quo of grade levels and schools, and simply upgrade what needs upgrading. So we have another slide here. So this is the one that shows the Robinson comprehensive renovation. We say priority one. We've identified that as your priority one through the statement of interest, and then each of the schools needing modest or some renovations. Chris Foley should have said some, not modest, because it's in the same category as Miller.
It was just the two middle schools and the academy are kind of noted as not having or needing or any updates or renovations. I'm just curious as to how we landed on that.
So we will identify. We've already, through the process of what we've been through, we've addressed all three of those schools, and there's an understanding that they are not changing in grade configuration and not changing in substantial structure. We will identify costs associated, issues, educational issues, and building issues that need to be upgraded. So you will see that eventually.
Okay.
But what the options are so that's a sort of, okay, these are the things that are going to have to be done, and here's some relative costs for those. Everything above is a choice of grade configuration and degree, both of which, or all of which are different than what's down below.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Very good.
So grade configuration 2, it is almost a status quo in that it maintains not a pre-K but a K2 and a 3-5 configuration. And what we have identified is that the Abbott and the pre-K would share central administration and pre-K would share the Abbott building. The K2 would be the Miller School and a new school at Robinson, and that assumes that it's a larger school than what you currently have there, and then it would continue to filter down to Day, Crisafulli, and Nabonasset. The difference here is that Nabonasset changes in configuration from a current K2 to a 3-5.
Which it was at one point, right?
And so this is the narrative or the bullet points that follow along with what I've just described. So we have a larger Robinson School, and the Miller School for the K2s. The 3-5s would be Day, Crisafulli, and Nabonasset. And the pre-K and central admin would be at Abbott. In option 1, there is no identified solution for central administration at this point. Okay, and so, here we go to the alternative grade configuration of a K-5 school. And again, we've identified out the Abbott building for housing pre-K and central admin, and then then having 5 instead of 6 K-5 schools, and the Robinson being potentially a larger school. And so, and that's consistent with the SOI that was submitted. We've identified, the SOI identifies the Robinson School, but it opens up the possibility in the SOI of having a larger population to encompass more students within the school. And the next slide is, again, simply that in bullet points. So you wind up with 5 instead of 6 elementary schools. And the next steps are a community meeting, and we discussed having that in the latter part of May, prior to Memorial Day weekend. And by that time, we anticipate being able to integrate some conceptual costs. We're not looking for a referendum in any way at this point. I think what's important to understand is that the results of the SOI have significant influence on what's going to happen. So, you know, if the MSBA engages you and says, we'd like to get you started, the question is it Robinson at current grade levels and Robinson at current population levels, or is it a K-5 at a small level, or K-5 at a larger level? So, you know, we put these options out there for discussion. We're not, I don't think that it's realistic to suggest that you as a committee or the community say, let's go full speed ahead with 1, 2, or 3, or something else, because it will be so impacted by decisions that are out of anyone's control at this point.
That was actually something Valerie and I had a kind of a quick conversation after our working meeting today. And one of the things we were going to actually mention just with the committee was just this notion of, we were talking about, like, what does that community meeting look like? If it's not so different than the first one, perhaps even that next community meeting really is the presentation of the final report. And we take on the ownership of doing community meetings when we have information from the MSBA next year. You know what I mean? Which is another thing to think about in terms of what does it look like, and so then we might just have more of that. I throw that out there. That was just part of the conversation that Valerie had and I had.
Yeah, I think it's open discussion, but it feels like there's not a whole lot that we wouldn't want the community to feel like they're voting on one of these options yet when it's so premature.
Like it could be part, I imagine, a small part of the meeting with the final report.
Sure.
Because it'll be part of the final report.
Yes.
But it wouldn't necessarily have to be its own thing if we don't have the information from the MSBA yet. It was just a thought.
We could always look at doing like some sort of a mini Q&A or something, you know, this side of, or before the end of this school year, you know, just to maybe give community members an opportunity to just ask some questions, because again, these are our business meetings, as we've said, and, you do hear it from families of, oh, what's going on with this, or, so maybe if we can think of maybe not such a formal way that we had that, when we did that big meeting in Stony Brook and it was Stony Brook, I can't even remember. Yes.
It was.
But just a chance to kind of a check-in for families to just kind of give them an opportunity to ask any questions or look for some clarifying information, because it is quite confusing, even as I mean, the working group, you're clearly well into it, but as school community members trying to dig through, the various grant options and timelines and, how can these different grade configurations and what does this mean? So I think it might be, if we can have a think about a way to just give that kind of a...
You're saying with the final report?
Maybe tied in, with that, but it probably doesn't
when
need
there's
a
kind
big
of more
formal...
more meat to present. Yeah.
Maybe not on the same night, though, or something that if we're having the final report 1 week, that maybe the following meeting we could put it
Or
on
like
our
a
agenda
separate-
or separate.
A separate business meeting maybe that's the only thing on our agenda.
Yeah, just to give
Something.
community members a chance to actually kind of go through the report and, read through it and stuff. Because sometimes it can be hard to, take that in and kind of ponder it. So yeah, I would definitely be up for. I'm a firm believer in that. Even sometimes when there's no news, it's still valuable to communicate that information as well. So that also, people understand there's still work being done. There's still progress. That because even though we have to wait on the MSBA, there's still other stuff that we will be able to kind of keep researching and diving into and doing our due diligence on that so we're maybe in a stronger, more knowledgeable place when we start hearing more back from the MSBA as well.
And that brings up a good point, because that is a good connection then with the final report, because what Phil's been saying, and like even he alluded to with your question about the middle schools and the academy, in the final report there will be very specific things for each of the buildings. And one of the things Phil shared with us today was just that notion that there'll be things for the Robinson School in that final report, that if the MSBA in November then did invite us into the pipeline to be considered for an actual project, then some of those things would just go off the list.
Exactly.
But they're still on the list. And so when we see that more comprehensive piece, there might be more information for people to ask questions about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I ask as well, though, on this, we're talking about potentially new buildings and a bigger one if we do the Robinson. And again, I know it's all pie in the sky, but one of the things that kind of is resonating with me at the moment as we talk about that is, we potential locations, if we were to look at a bigger one, as we're having these conversations over the coming months, are we also able to have that conversation about, potential sites if we were to do a new building or do a slightly bigger one? And in terms of looking at the spread, because I'm very aware that, all our school buildings are really one side of Westford. And so as part of, this researching phase and figuring it out, could we also be having some look at kind of geographic locations? And I know it would all be, again, based on what happens with the MSBA, but I think it would be really worthwhile for us to have that discussion now, because again, that would impact busing and school start times,
Yeah.
all that fun stuff.
I was just going to add to that the working group has talked about how the final report is more complicated than just what the options are, because we do hope that it's more nuanced with start times and all of these sort of have a degree of redistricting in them, right? So,
Okay.
So I think just looking into the different options in the presentation, there isn't actually enough information to know about it.
Yeah.
Because, for example, it has all those great configurations, but it's very hard to understand what that means. without any projected numbers, like
Yeah.
how many students you expect from each school. And then like, for example, right, you go to like a bigger Robinson school, how many students you are talking about, like, and what does bigger mean, right? So, for example, if you go to option 3, you could also go, hey, instead of like keeping 4 elementary school plus Robinson, and then the bigger Robinson school can it be bigger so that we only need the other 3, then we don't need to renovate day school, right? So like there are a lot of questions which like I could be asking, but I don't really know the context, so it's very hard for me to understand all those like options without any like numbers behind it.
And I think that a big piece of that is dependent again on information from the MSBA, right? Because the MSBA, and you can speak I think better to it, Phil, but the MSBA they look at our elementary schools right now and they'd say, wow, these are really small compared to what they're used to doing. And so at that point, you know, our schools, when we looked at this, what SMMA looked at is they looked at how many students are we housing now. They also are looking at the enrollment projections, right? That has been a part of the study. And so they're looking to see, okay, well, if you have this many classrooms right now and you're expected to have this many this number of third grade sections 10 years from now. So they did do all that. It isn't in this because that's, I think, just a little bit more information than, since we're not making a decision on it. But your point is well taken, that before we ever made any decision like that, we would want to know, if a bigger school, does that mean you can do even more and kind of take care of issues at other schools? But that would be some of the stuff that'd be coming to us from MSBA, because they would have recommendations as to whether, you know what, we look at your data, we think you should be looking at an 800 size school, or we think you should be looking at the 350. What you have right now seems to really work for you, and they would, in anything that we've talked about the MSBA process previously, and if we are to enter into that with them, we have to have multiple options. Like, that's a part of their process, that we have to have different things that we look at. So they would sort of lead that path for us. Is that accurate?
That's absolutely, yeah. And I completely understand your wanting to know more. The 600 pages that this is going to wind up being,
It's 652 right now.
We'll expect
would
you
put
to
a lot of people to
give us
sleep.
the Cliff Notes.
So-
Cliff notes.
Just fit it into ChatGPT, everything's fine.
So I try and make it as concise as we can, but yes, there will be a lot of a lot more detail in there, as you'll see, for those who want to
I have a follow-up
work their way
question
through it.
to Catherine's question, because I think I was assuming something that is not exactly clear. So in terms of when you were talking about a bigger Robinson, I was assuming that it would be on the same footprint, but is it on the table for it not to be on the same footprint, so for it to be somewhere else in town?
I think that there's a term we use called swing space. Where do the students go if you're renovating a school in place, or if you're putting the school on the same footprint of the site? And there's no swing space available for 350 children in Westford. So what we've done in many communities is put it alongside and then tear down and then swap activities. So ball fields become building becomes ball fields, that kind of thing. So, and we know the Robinson School is supporting roughly 350 students now, but it's a single story. And single story schools are a thing of the past. So is it 2 stories, is it 3 stories? You have both in your elementary system.
Right.
So what does So what does 700 students look like alongside it, for example? And, issues of wetlands and things like that all have to be taken into account. So we will take a preliminary look at that, but it then takes a more detailed site investigation of wetland flagging and geotechnical and that kind of thing to be able to say, you can put it here. This study won't say that. This study will say, we've looked at this and this is a possibility. But it won't be replaced on the same footprint. There's just no room for it. No place for the kids.
But I think our initial conversation and question was similar in that I think we were initially assuming that it would be the same site. But to Phil's point, it has something else has to be built because we don't have a building that could be renovated while the kids are still in it. But I think our other question though is then kind of leading to what Catherine was saying, which is there other space available in town? Because I would say when we look at the placement of our schools now, it is a little strange.
Westford.
You know what I mean? Like, the Chris Foley, Westford Academy, and Robinson are right on top of each other. And then Miller, way up, and there is nothing below 495. But I don't know what land exists. So that's what we'd have to consider.
Can I also ask just a generic question, and it's more to inform me as we go through this? Are there certain requirements or regulations to follow, say, in terms of if you have a school building that has 300 students or 700 students, or based on the number of, like, how much outdoor space also needs to be included? Like, how much green space or playgrounds?
I'm going to assume no, actually.
No.
I'm going to assume because when you think of all the communities in Massachusetts,
Yeah.
they just don't have access to the same space.
Yeah.
So I think they would have recommendations. I think there'd be clear, like, standards of design, but you can't tell,
Yeah.
Melrose or someone just built a brand new.
Well, we have a 1,000 student K-8 going up on a 1 acre site in Lawrence.
Yeah, there you go. There's a good example.
So the answer is no.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because when you think, you build playgrounds for, that it can accommodate a certain number of students, when you double that, little Johnny is waiting double the amount of time to get a free swing on his 10, 15-minute recess break.
And it could potentially, though, impact, because the MSBA could certainly, they have very specific standards as to what they will reimburse and what they will put their money towards. So it could be some situations where in some communities they might say, we'll pay for this if you do that, but if you don't, you're on your own.
Yeah.
And that could be a similar thing for some places that might not have the same access to space. But yeah, the communities are so different that they wouldn't be able to require it.
Exactly, and in that school in Lawrence, there's a city park on the other side of that street, and there's a city park on the other side of that street. So it's, you're not putting it there where no one could play.
Right.
But there's also use of the roofs
Yeah.
for activities.
Yeah,
And there's we designed a school out in Templeton, which seems like it's the middle of nowhere. And we investigated, I think it was 18 sites, and Templeton is mostly wet. And they wound up with a large school on a 3-acre site with self-contained playfields, and it's working very, very well. So, it varies.
Right.
It varies. No design professional would come to you and recommend something that wouldn't work well for the kids.
Just gonna check over here, yeah.
Obviously, it's up to wiser minds who will be here about how to structure this May meeting. But I will definitely put in a pitch for presenting these options to the community, even though we won't have the MSBA information until the fall, there's real value in getting this to be part of the community conversation. Inertia is tough, tradition is tough. People are used to the way our schools are organized, and this is potentially could be a big change. So the more, I think the idea it can be introduced, as long as it's, you know, properly contextualized for the community, and that this is a preliminary discussion, and that obviously there's more information to be gathered and input from the MSBA. But putting that out in the community and letting that kind of churn is a good thing, because the community generally doesn't like being surprised. So starting that conversation now with the proper context, I think, could be really healthy. The other question, and I'm gonna channel my student colleagues who aren't here tonight. One of the things we heard real loud and clear from our middle school colleagues was that they didn't like the day school split. And we currently have an odd number of 3 to 5 schools, and those feed into 2 middle schools. Do the math, somebody's got to split. I know in this, you know, potential reconfiguration, we've got the, you know, options 1, 2, and 3 that talk about how the different breakdowns are, but it doesn't necessarily clarify how those 3 5s would be feeding into the 6 8s. So I can guarantee if there were certain middle school students right now, they'd be drilling and have many questions on how that would work. You know, if there were 5 K5s in that option 3, and one of them is kind of an outsized, larger one, how could that potentially impact the way we feed into the middle schools?
It would depend on the location.
And could it be done in such a way that it didn't cause a split? I think that's the other, and again, I'm just saying this because I won't be here later. I know you're not picking between these yet, but I think that's going to be other feedback the community will have on the option 2, is that's creating another split. So we'd still potentially have a day school split, and now we've got an outsized Robinson school at K2 that's going to get split between 3 5s. And those are little guys that are then going to get split. I think there's going to be a negative kind of visceral reaction from students and families about having another split, because that was definitely the resounding messages we got from our middle schoolers, was they would prefer not to have schools that then, like the day school, gets split. I don't think they'd like this one either.
So was there any write-up of, you mentioned, the second time you've mentioned that, that effort between the high school and middle school students, was there any write-up that took place after that? Takeaways?
They'd had some notes, and they came and they presented to our committee, and didn't they had a
We actually can send you a link from there when they came
we
and
can
met.
send you their presentation.
That would be great.
Yeah, they made their own
I think it would
PowerPoint.
be worth including that reference.
Yeah.
Yep, they would appreciate that.
Yeah.
We can send you that.
Gonna move us on in a minute, but go ahead.
Just following on from something Gloria said, I wonder, is there something we should consider that when we do have the final presentation in the next couple of weeks, is it worth highlighting that and like emailing select board, FinCom, whoever, other community members, that just to note this is coming up on our agenda tonight, it might be of interest to you. I know we're still early in the process, but clearly this is not going to just come to fruition on the backs of school committee. It really will be a town-wide partnership. So I think maybe giving them, I know there
We
will.
were thinking for if the final presentation takes place in a community meeting, right, and not at a school committee meeting, but at a community meeting, then that's when we were intending to make sure that, yes, because we told all the community members, and we told the select board and town manager and everybody that we would be including them in that conversation. So we will do that. If they do like a mini presentation of the final presentation before the main one, we could still do that as well too.
I think it would be worth just highlighting with, to them that this is up.
Yeah.
That would be good.
Anything else?
Another 40 minutes.
Thanks, Phil.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right on.
And if something comes up, crosses your mind later, the working group is meeting again on Wednesday, so just keep feeding any thoughts to me and Chris, and we can keep working them through the process. Thank you. Next item of business, bus contract update from Jenny.
You're doing an excellent job keeping us on time.
Go pro.
Thanks for having me. And tonight I will provide you two updates. The first one is the bus contract. The second one will be fiscal year 23 quarter 3 financial review. Our district went out to bid for a transportation contract in March 2019. The original contract was signed for 3 fiscal years, from fiscal year 20 to fiscal year 22. With the extension of with the option of 2 extension year. So fiscal year 23 is the first extension year. Fiscal year 24 is the second extension year. D-Bus was the lower bidder for the contract. For fiscal year 24's bid price, the original price on the bid is $454 per bus for regular transportation and $165 for after-school activities. So we were able to negotiate with D to reduce the price a little bit. For regular transportation, it's from $454 per bus to $445 per bus, and for after-school activities from $165 to $135 per bus. So the total cost of the athletic run still remains the same for fiscal year 24. The total cost of transportation is $2,867,675, which exceeds the fiscal year 24's budget amount by $99,000. So the district have to cover the additional expense by other area of our general funds budget. So it's recommended that this final proposal be voted by school committee tonight. We will go out to bid for fiscal year 25.
Great. Thank you, Jenny. Yeah. Anybody have any questions, comments?
Yeah, great. So like we negotiate the price down a bit. I know that you mentioned that we're going to actually absorb the cost by saving, and then like you already have what of saving in mind already.
So we are hoping we can save in other area of our general fund. Usually we will, but I cannot just guarantee you we will have this 99,000 somewhere, but usually we do.
That's a yes.
But yes, it's going to come from something else.
That's a yes. We're going to actually save $99,000
Have to.
from other places.
Not a lot of choice.
We won't have a choice.
bring us, slip it under the pillow.
Right. Other comments?
I will just, one example is this year we were fortunate in that we didn't freeze the budget.
Mhm.
I don't see that being an option for next year. Right, so I mean, there will definitely be things we'd have to address and look at, because it's, we don't just have $99,000 sitting around.
Right.
Because for last 2 fiscal year, we froze the budget around January, but at this point, we still have something left. So hopefully that's the same case for next year, but nobody will know at this point.
Looking for a motion to approve the FY24 transportation contract extension.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor? Great. And you're staying with us for the next, would you like me to present the slides?
Yes, would you be able to open up the slide so I can start from there for fiscal year 23's quarter 3? So if you can move to the first slide. Okay, here you can see the financial report for fiscal year 23's quarter threes, general funds operating budget by individual function code. I will compare fiscal year 23's quarter three with fiscal year 22's quarter three data. By the end of the third quarter, the unencumbered general funds operating budget ending available balance is $2,232,606, which is located at the third column, available balance, the bottom line. So the total percentage used is 96.51%. If we look into the second slide for fiscal year 22's quarter three data, the remaining balance at the third quarter of last year is $1,508,054. The total percentage is 97.58%. So we can tell from the data we spend 1% less than last fiscal year at this point. So the total available balance is almost $700,000 more than last fiscal year. At the end of the third quarter, I will explain the major difference by individual function code. So let me start from the function code 1000, administration. The total usage is 95% in fiscal year 23 versus 97% in fiscal year 22. The major difference is due to the two function code. The first one is 1210, superintendent of school. We spend 2% less than last fiscal year because fringe benefit has not been encumbered for fiscal year 23. And for Dr. Chu's office has small saving on supplies and printings. The second function code is 1410, business office. We also has 2% less than last fiscal year. We haven't received, because we haven't received the invoices for fiscal year 23's due to from the auditing company, Melanson CPA. We have completed all the three major audits for fiscal year 22 with great success, which include the first one, annual audit for town's financial statement, school portion. The second one is single audit, special education grant cluster. That includes grant 240 and grant 262. The third one is the end of year report audit. We have received clean opinion with no findings for these three critical audits. So that's the best result we can get for the audit. And we are just waiting for the bill so we can pay. It doesn't mean we really save 2% for this fiscal year. So next slide, we will go to 2000 instructional. For 2000 instructional in state function code, we spend 2% less than last fiscal year as well. The major reason is linked to Unit E, contract negotiation comp reserve, because the majority of our comp reserve has been reallocated to appropriate state function code. Since we embedded our fiscal year 23's Unit E retro pay into 2000 function code, right now Unit E's contract has not been finalized yet. So this funding has been designated for this particular purpose. That's the major reason for the difference of 2000. And I will also point out a couple more function code. The first one is 2320, medical and therapeutical services. We have spent 95% in fiscal year 23 versus 99% in fiscal year 22. This is mostly due to the special education contracted service. This is an area really hard to project. So these expenses reflect a special education need population. So that's why we didn't project exactly as last year. The next slide, still 2000. we will talk about 23-25 teacher substitute. So by the end of the third quarter, the available balance is $191,989. We have saved approximately $88,000 on sub-teacher pay in this fiscal year, because that's another area also hard to project, because it not only covers the family leave, but also covers the medical and health leave. So for those areas, it's really depends on if this leave is fully paid, partially paid, or not paid. That's why we still have some budget left. Then 2355 substitute for professional development. Because the sub-teacher's need has been reduced this year, that's why the PD expenditure for sub-teacher also reduced accordingly. The current remaining balance is $15,000. The next one is 3,000 function code, other school services. I will focus on 3,300 transportation, because this fiscal year we received $180,000 from APA fund to support our bus fuel costs and additional bus cost. So the APA fund money was transferred into the transportation line. We were able to maintain 95% of the total expenditure for this year, which is the same level as last fiscal year. Next one is 4,000 operation and maintenance. The first function code I will talk about is 4110, operation and maintenance. Because custodian contract was just settled in March this year. So the custodian retro pay, the total amount $30,514 for fiscal year 23 has been processed immediately for the next payroll cycle. We have received a very positive feedback for processing those payroll in a timely and efficient manner this year. Another area is 4120, heating of the building, and 4130, utility services. For this total combined balance for these two state functions, we currently only have $63 left with the consideration of encumbrance, because fiscal year 23, especially in the first part of the fiscal year, the fuel costs just went through the roof. So we spend much more on the heating cost. Compared to fiscal year 22, the third quarter, we still had $72,000 left at this point. But fortunately, we still appear to be on target at this point.
Down to the penny.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Next one is 5,000 benefit, insurance, and leases. We have spent 75% in fiscal year 23 versus 71% in fiscal year 22. That's due to 5,300 rental leases of equipment, because we fully encumber copier lease in fiscal year 23, but in last year that was just partially encumbered. The last one I'm going to talk about general fund is 9,000 tuition. For the second quarter, the total projected deficit for out-of-district tuition was $200,000, because we still have some money left from our transportation line. So we were able to move $120,000 from transportation line into out-of-district tuition line. So the third quarter current estimated ending balance for the tuition is $56,000. By the end of the school year, we need to cover this cost over the budget from other area of our general fund. When we talk about tuition, we have to mention circuit breaker grant. Because for circuit breaker grant, we always try to use the grant revenue we receive for this year and reserve that to apply to next fiscal year's tuition. So the entire brought forward balance in circuit breaker account, $2,076,381 from fiscal year 22 has been fully applied to fiscal year 23's out of district tuition. So as of today, we receive $1,213,760. So we are expecting another 2 payments for total amount $871,000 will be received by the end of the school year. The total amount of fiscal year 23's circuit breaker is $2,084,797 will be carried over to next fiscal year to cover fiscal year 24's tuition. So we just wrap up everything for general funds operating budget. Let me jump into fund 0255 and 0265, federal and state grant. For federal grant, the total amount of remaining ESSER 3 funding is $277,000. We will use that to offset the free full-day kindergarten program. At the end of the third quarter, we have currently drawn down $163,760 from ESSER 3 funding. We will continue to draw down the remaining by the end of the fiscal year. For state grant, you probably already aware, the electric mail check already sitting outside for almost like 2 months. So we purchased and paid this vehicle on the third quarter. That costs about $56,000. I'm sorry for the typo here, it's 46. It actually should be $56,000. We are currently waiting for the state grant money to come in. The next one is our $42,000 math grant I mentioned for the first quarter financial report, because we have been waiting for a long time for DASI instruction about if we can use that in fiscal year 23. The final ruling is we cannot use that in fiscal year 23 at all. So we can only use that to reimburse the math expenditure we spent in fiscal year 22. So we only spent $2,000 in fiscal year 22. The remaining money has to be sent back to the state, but not just us. There are hundreds of other districts. They send this money back to the state. I don't know why the state has to go through this hassle, because we all send those money back to the state, but it's what it is for the state grant for this one. The next one is 0285 revolving account. If we compare fiscal year 23's quarter 3 ending balance for all revolving account, the current balance is $2,262,335. Compared to fiscal year 22's quarter 3's ending balance is $1.8 million. This total ending balance is almost $400,000 more than last fiscal year. So we are building more reserve in our miscellaneous school activity account, such as different grade level activity fees, music fees, elementary book sales, and music lessons. So hopefully we can use this reserve to help us to offset some future general funds operating budget. Like currently we use music fee, part of the music fee from revolving account to help us to offset general funds operating budget like a music teacher salary. So that's an area we can consider for the future fiscal year. Another one I want to point out is our building usage revolving account, because fiscal year 23 is the first year we started to implement the new fee structure for building usage. So far, we have generated about 87,000 building usage revenue, and we already spent 73,000 on the expenditure. So the 14,000 positive cash flow was generated for these revolving account. So the saving in this fund balance could be used to offset the future facility needs. The last slide is 0295, other special revenue fund. Our school choice account still remains strong. The total offset from our school choice to our general fund's operating budget is $560,000, comprising of $312,000 we used to offset general fund's operating budget, and plus additional $248,000 was authorized for fiscal year 23 to support free full-day kindergarten. So we have so far charged $416,000 school choice to cover on the teacher cost, TA cost, and supplies and transportations. So that's pretty much everything I want to talk about our Q3 financial reports. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny.
It's wonderfully prepared and
Oh,
presented.
man. So well laid out and broken down.
I'm gonna start with Gloria.
I only have one, and I don't know if it's possible to project yet, but do you have any sense of where we might land at the end of Q4 and what the potential is that we'll be able to add supplemental funds to the Special Education Reserve Fund?
Yes, actually, we already had that discussion about the estimated ending balance by the end of the school year. So we might be able to prepay the special education tuition for next fiscal year. And so that's the plan we have
Okay, great.
for, the current status of our financials.
Fantastic. That's great.
Because that's allowed by DESE
Mm-hmm.
to prepay for next year's special education tuition.
Well, and especially since that line item is overspent this year, if we can
Right.
prepay for next year, that's
Right.
fantastic.
Yeah, and
That's
also
very
for
proactive.
Unity contract, because that has not been finally settled. So we were thinking about Unit E's retro pay. How do we do that from our general fund? That's another thing we need to consider for our general fund's
that cost doesn't
budget.
go away.
Yeah.
It's gonna come back.
It's building.
And when you researched the ability to pay the special education tuitions, to prepay them, that was a good conversation you had with Courtney Moran.
Right.
There are specific tuitions that can be prepaid.
Yes.
It's not just across the board. So
Exactly.
some of it can be and some of it can't be. So I thought that was interesting, and and we have all that information. So
Right, it's for private school tuition up to 3 months. And also the tuition we can prepay is for collaboratives.
we can prepay all the collaboratives and things like
Right.
that.
Great.
But for private school, it's just for 3 months.
Any other comments, questions, discussion?
The one that just popped up for me was the building usage revenue. That's based on we hired that new position.
Yep, coordinator.
And costs
Coordinator.
for custodial costs and things
Yeah.
like that. So that's what when it says the expenditure, that is.
That's all in.
Yeah, that also includes her salary.
Yeah.
So that was good. That was something that was presented, that we thought that it would be something that would help pay for that, and it has.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And that coordinator, we had, like, the hours is enough. We don't need, it is working as is, or it doesn't need any.
It seems to be.
Yes, yes,
haven't-
because,
yeah.
I think she's working as the hours
Yeah.
she's supposed to work. She's not overwork anyhow.
She's not perfect. No, that's great to see. It's doing what it's supposed to do.
Everything counts.
Everything. Mind the pennies.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Jenny. Appreciate it. Last up, a policy update. Take it away.
Well, we keep it short and sweet tonight unless you have questions. So, a reminder, we currently have 2 policies up for public comment. This is our second meeting of our 3-meeting kind of process for introducing or updating new policies. P2102 and P2103, the goals of the superintendent and the evaluation of the superintendent. As of yet, we've received no comments on public comment, but that is open until Thursday. It closes the 27th, and I haven't received any kind of other feedback from office administration or school committee. So policy is meeting on Thursday for Gloria's last policy meeting, and we anticipate kind of finalising that, and that we will be voting for it on May 8th. So unless anyone has any questions, queries, that's kind of where we are at that one.
Great. I'll take another motion.
Motion to adjourn.
And a second, please.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.